He says that love is a beast of prey that pauses in its prowl. It crouches under a bush in splendid flower to seize a heart and body for its food. This beast thou dreamst immortal and a god. O human mind, vainly thou torturest an hour's delight to stretch through infinity's long void and fill its formless, passionless gulfs, persuading the insensible abyss to lend eternity to perishing things, and trickst the fragile movements of thy heart with thy spirit's faint of immortality. All here emerges born from nothingness. Encircled it lasts by the emptiness of space, a while upheld by an unknowing force, then crumbles back into its parent naught. Only the mute alone can forever be. In the alone, there is no room for love. In vain to clothe love's perishable mud, thou hast woven on the immortal's borrowed loom the ideal's gorgeous and unfading robe. The ideal never yet was real made. Imprisoned in form, that glory cannot live. Into a body shut, it breathes no more. Intangible, remote, forever pure, a sovereign of its own brilliant void, unwillingly it descends to earthly air to inhabit a white temple in man's heart. In his heart it shines, rejected by his life. Immutable, bodiless, beautiful, grand and dumb, immobile on its shining throne it sits. Dumb it receives his offering and his prayer. It has no voice to answer to his call, no feet that move, no hands to take his gifts. Aerial statue of the nude idea, virgin conception of a bodiless God, its light stirs man the thinker to create an earthly semblance of diviner things. Its hued reflection falls upon man's acts. His institutions are its cenotaphs. He signs its dead conventions with its name. His virtues don the ideal's sky robe and a nimbus of the outline of its face. He hides their littleness with the divine name. Yet insufficient is the bright pretense to screen their indigent and earthy make. Earth only is there, and not some heavenly source. If heavens there are, they are veiled in their own light. If a truth eternal somewhere reigns unknown, it burns in a tremendous void of God. For truth shines far from the falsehoods of the world. How can the heavens come down to unhappy earth, or the eternal lodge in drifting time? How shall the ideal tread earth's dolorous soil, where life is only a labor and a hope, a child of matter and by matter fed, a fire flaming low in nature's great, a wave that breaks upon a shore in time, a journey's toilsome trudge with death for goal.
A deed of praise that pauses in its prose, it crouches under a bush in splendid flower to seize a heart and body for its food. This beast thou dreams immortal and a god.
Yes. Savitri is following death as he leads away Satyavan's soul in the conviction that her love is powerful enough to bring Satyavan back alive to earth. And death is doing everything he can to convince her that that is nonsense. And we read last time what he had to say about love. And in a way, some of these things that he says are true about what human beings call love. But Savitri's love is a different kind of love. So here he's saying that this thing that you call love, this feeling that you have for Satyavan and that you think he has for you, it's just like a wild animal, a predator that's pausing in its prowl, it's wandering around all the time looking for prey, and now it has hidden itself under this beautiful bush full of lovely blossoms, ready to jump out and seize a human heart, a human body to feed on. And this beast, you think, is an immortal God. This is what you believe in, he says. Is it clear?
Which is depicted as the beast? Love?
Love, yes. So this is not what we think about love, and it's not what Savitri believes about love. And I don't think even that death believes in this, but this is what he's telling her to discourage her, to make her go back, so that he can take away the soul of Savitri, of Shraddhavan. And he's got a lot more disillusioning things to tell her in the course of the next 100 pages. We will have to read them all. This will help us to become wise. We should listen to these things that he has to say. Sarojini.
A human mind vainly the touches on our delight to stretch through infinities, long void, and feel its formless, personless
Gulfs.
Persuading the
insensible
abyss to lend eternity to bracing things, and treat the fragile movement of thy heart with thy spirit's faint of immortality.
Yes, thank you. So he addresses her as a mind. He says, oh, human mind. In vain, it's futile, it's useless what you are doing. You are torturing 1 hour's delight. You're stretching out the delight of a short time, of a brief hour, stretching it out. You want to stretch it out to infinity. And he says infinity is just a long emptiness. You want to fill that emptiness, those gulfs, those deep places of infinity that are formless and passionless. They have no shape, they have no feeling. No? You want to persuade that abyss of nothingness, which is insensible, which doesn't feel anything, to lend eternity to perishing things. What we enjoy here on earth are perishing things. They are not going to last for eternity. What you want to do is to take this brief moment of delight that you've had with Shraddhavan, and you want to stretch it out forever. Through infinity's long void. And you want to trick your heart, the fragile, breakable movements of your heart, with the spirit's feint of immortality. This word feint is also a trick, a pretense. You try, it's what magicians do. They do something and they make you see something that you didn't see. A feint, a pretense. So he says there's something in your spirit which is pretending that there's something like immortality. But don't allow your heart to be tricked by that. And now he's going to tell her how things really are. Martin.
All here emerges born from nothingness, encircled it lasts by the emptiness of space, a while upheld by an unknowing force, then crumbles back into its parent naught. Only the mute alone can forever be. In the alone there is no room for love.
Everything here, everything that we see and feel and experience has been born, he says, from nothingness. And it may last here for a while, but it's surrounded by the nothingness, the emptiness of space. It lasts for a little while because it's upheld, it's supported for a time by an unknowing force, unconscious force. This is what the physicists also tell us, no? There's an unconscious force that upholds everything material or everything that happens in this universe. And then it's been upheld for a while, then it will just crumble. It will lose its shape, its form, it will crumble back into that nothingness from which it was born, its parent naught. There's only one thing which really exists. Only the mute alone, the silent one. That's the only thing that can go on existing forever. And that is alone. It is one. There's no room in that one for love, he says.
He's not referring this alone to the divine.
No, that's what it's his way of referring to the divine. He's taking this Upanishadic idea of the one without a second, and he's turning it rather cynically to his own purposes. We cannot rely on anything that he says. Bhavana?
In vain to cold love's perishable mud, thou hast owned on the immortal borrowed note, the ideal, gorgeous and unfading robe. The ideal never yet was real me.
Yes. So he says love, this thing that you're calling love, it's dependent on the body, and the body is just perishable mud. It's not going to last long. But you've dressed it up in this wonderful robe. You have borrowed a loom. A loom is the machine on which we weave cloth. No? So perhaps the immortals have some loom like that, on that otherworldly loom that belongs to another world, not this world of mortality. You have woven the gorgeous and unfading robe of the ideal. This is what he's talking about here. He has shown us the twilight of the ideal. It was a very, very beautiful place, full of inspiring and attractive and wonderful experiences. But death is saying all this is an illusion. None of it exists. The ideal was never yet made real. It's never been realized. And this is what we actually find, no? It's very convincing when he says this. Ideals can be inspiring, but realizing them is another matter. Gumsun? Yes?
You tell something. Last time you said something about the double twilight.
About the what?
The twilight you call.
Yes.
You said it now, and last time you said here is a double twilight. Can you say anything about it? Because I.
Yes. Now we are in the book of the double twilight. So death shows to Savitri two twilights. First of all, he shows her the twilight, the dream twilight of the ideal. That's what we read about the previous weeks. That was such a beautiful experience, hopeful experience, emerging from the dark night, all these promises, these wonderful things. But now he's telling her, don't rely on that. All that is just illusory. Then the third canto is called The Debate of Love and Death. It's a conversation between them. And then the fourth canto is called The Dream Twilight of the Earthly Real. And that is our reality, which is also a kind of dream twilight, but instead of being a beautiful, hopeful dream, it's a very dark, disillusioning dream. That's why this book has that title. It's okay? Yeah?
Sorry, not completely. Why is the word double there?
Because these two twilights, in a way, are complementary. Especially in this way that he's showing them to her. That the ideal is attractive, but it's never made real. There's this other dream twilight, which is the reality of earth. And that's a contrast. And from both these points of view, he wants to convince her that her hope to bring Shraddhavan back to life on earth is hopeless. And very, very many interesting things are discussed on the way. So now this continues about the ideal, Gumsun.
Imprisoned in form that glory cannot live, into a body shall sleep, bliss is no more.
Continue.
Intangible, remote, forever pure, a subversion of its own brilliance void. Unwillingly, it descends to earthly air, to inhabit a white temple in man's heart. In his heart, it shines, rejected by his life.
Yes. These lines are important for us because we are drawn here to Auroville by an ideal. We are trying to realize an ideal. This is a way of looking at that. That the ideal never yet was real made. In fact, he says it never can be made real. That glory, the glory of the ideal, cannot live when it's put into a form. If you realize it, it will die. If you shut it into a body, it can't breathe anymore. It will die. The ideal is something that is intangible, can't be touched. It's far away. It's forever pure because it can't be touched and it's far away. It rules, it's a sovereign, a ruler of its own brilliant, shining emptiness. Unwillingly, it descends to earthly air. It will come down. We may get touched by an ideal. It may come and inhabit a white temple in man's heart. Yeah. But it may shine there in his heart, but it's rejected by his life. He's not able to live up to it.
Can I ask? Ideal, what is said about ideal? It is true?
It's true in a way. It's true in a way. I remember some group of guests who came once, a gentleman from the Philippines. He said something so wise. He said, I admire you people. You are following an ideal. He said, ideals can't be realized, but it's so important to have them because they're your guiding star. They tell you when you're on the right road. It's a star that guides you. So that's more true, isn't it? So it may be that the thing about the ideal is we don't see it absolutely clearly. It's inspiring, it's beautiful, it's attractive, but we don't see it in all its details. And later on, Savitri will say to Death, yes, please, let's not linger here in this dream world of the ideal. I'm not interested in ideals. I'm interested in what is real.
But it is like a truth. The ideal is also like a...
The ideal is a formation of the truth, which can express itself in so many different ways. And yes, exactly what that man said. It's a guiding star. If we didn't have that ideal of human unity, achieving the consciousness that could actually bring about human unity, what would we be doing here?
But all these qualities, it indicates the aspects of truth, intangible, remote, pure.
Yes, an ideal is a particular, I would say, a mental formation of truth.
But Shraddhavan, you see the real in idea?
Sorry? In the ideal?
Yeah.
Yes, actually I do, because since these are truths, now we are in an evolutionary level where we're not able to realize, we're not able to make them real on earth. But what Shraddhavan and Mother are telling us is that's why we are here.
But, for example, in matrimonial, when you go to the matrimonial, maybe not every time, but something from inside.
Yes, in your heart, yes. But how far can we live it? That's what he says. It shines there in the heart, but it's rejected by the life. How far can you put your ideals into practice? We can all try. It's a very good thing to do.
I practice.
Yes, you practice, yes. And when Sri Aurobindo talks about the life divine, he means a life in which all these things are realized. And not in some paradise somewhere far away, right here in the material world. But we have to recognize that we've got quite a long way to go before we can do that.
And the white temple indicates what?
Something pure.
Pure.
In his heart it shines, rejected by his life. So you'll read Ganga Lakshmi?
Immutable, bodiless, beautiful, ground and done, immobile on its shining throne, it sits. Dumb, it receives his offering and his prayer.
So what is it here?
Sorry?
What is it here?
The ideal.
The ideal, yes. The ideal is immutable. It doesn't change. It's bodiless. It's beautiful. It's grand. But it's dumb. It doesn't express itself except in that ideal way. It sits immobile. It doesn't move on that shining throne inside the white temple of the heart. Dumb, it receives the offerings, the prayers of the person whose heart it is in. Sergei.
It has no voice to answer to this call, no feet that move, no hand to take his gift. earlier stage of the idea, the conception of the godless God, bodiless God. Its light stirs man, the thinker, to create an earthly semblance of divine things.
This is what it does. It doesn't respond to us. I mean, this is what he says. Actually, perhaps if we worship an ideal, it does respond to us in a way, but not in the ordinary human way, not with a voice, not with feet, not with hands. No? He mocks it. He says it's just a statue made out of air. It's a statue that's been made of the nude idea. The idea is the original creative conception. No? But when that is unclothed, then what is it? No? A statue made of air. No? It's a virgin conception. It's pure. It's a conception, a mental conception of a God without a body. No? So it gives some light. The ideal does give some light. It stirs, it moves man, the thinker, to create here on earth an earthly semblance of diviner things. If we didn't have ideals, there are many things that wouldn't have happened on earth. But people were trying to create something ideal. It's a nice line, no? An earthly semblance, an earthly appearance of diviner things. But we can also look at it quite cynically and say that, yes, Mother has given us the idea of a moneyless society, a society in Auroville where there would be no circulation of money. And so we've created the financial service. It's a pretty poor implementation of our ideal. No?
But I tell you, Shraddhavan, when I came to Auroville in 81, immediately there are 40 people in fraternité. I have a lot of money, I give to Auroville, many places, 1 year, and the rest I put in the comment pot. I starting the comment pot. And suddenly, Otto, Alain Bernard, and somebody starting opposition to this group. It's terrible.
Anyway, let's not go into all the sad things that have happened in Auroville's history. I only want to say, and I don't mean it very, very seriously, because actually this morning I was moving around in Auroville from one place to another, and I found myself being very impressed by what we have achieved. This little group of 2,000 people, this is just a village, but things work. You go here and things work. You go there and things work. This is working, that is working. And each of these things has been set up somehow by the dream, usually, of 1 or 2 people, and then the goodwill of a great many other people that have made these things happen. So I don't mean that I'm scoffing, but it's a kind of example that I want to say, that we have an ideal, and some of these ideals are too difficult for us to actually live out in life. So we create an earthly semblance of those diviner things. And the danger is we might get satisfied with the earthly semblance and stop aiming for the diviner things. But we should keep aiming for the ideal. But that's a digression. Joel.
Its hued reflection falls upon man's acts His institutions are its cenotaph. He signs his dead conventions with its name. His virtues don the ideal's scary robe, and a nimbus of the outline of its face. He hides their littleness with the divine name.
Yes. Hued means coloured. The coloured reflection of the ideal falls on our human activity. Our institutions are its cenotaphs. You know what a cenotaph is? It's a memorial to the dead. Often a war memorial. So our human institutions, they've been earthly attempts to realize ideals. We've set up these things like the UN and so on. But those institutions are the memorials for the death of the ideal. Ideals can easily become conventions. Actually, I don't like to use the words human unity because it's too much of a dead label, you know. It's a convention if we don't really know what we mean when we say it. So that we put this label on our ideal. We try to live up to our ideals. So our virtues, our attempts to be good, put on this beautiful sky-coloured robe of the ideal. And a nimbus of the outline of its face. A nimbus is a sort of cloud. We get them sometimes at this time of year. The high-piled rain clouds, and behind there's the setting sun, and above the clouds you may see a nimbus, a rainbow-coloured halo of light reflecting the setting sun. So it's something like that, the ideal. It's cloudy and vague and out of reach. That seems to be the face of the ideal. He hides their littleness, the littleness of his institutions and his conventions and his virtues, with the divine name of the ideal. You'll read, Anita?
Yet insufficient is the bright pretense to screen their indigent and earthly make. Earth only is there and not some heavenly source.
Yes. So the pretense of the ideals is not enough. I mean, it's insufficient to hide how poor these things are, our institutions, our conventions, our virtues. There's a bright pretense we're doing all this in the name of the ideal, but actually what we actually achieve is indigent, poor, and earthy. Earth only is there, and not some heavenly source. And now he's going to tell us about heavens. Chandra.
If heavens there are, they are valid in their own right. If a truth eternal somewhere reigns unknown, is born in a tremendous void of God. But truth shines that someday
falsehoods
of the world. How can the heavens come down to unhappy earth, or the eternal Lord in drifting
drifting time. You know, leaves drift on water, they get carried along. Time is always moving. How can the eternal lodge in drifting time? It's always passing. So now what he's starting to do, and what he will continue to do, is to make a big opposition between the earth and the higher worlds, the heavens. So he says, all this we've been talking about, only earth is there and not any heavenly source. And if there are any heavens, they are very far away. They're hidden from us by their own light. If there is some eternal truth reigning somewhere, we don't know where, it's burning there in a tremendous emptiness. Again, he uses this word, void of God. Truth shines very far away from the falsehoods of the world. How can those higher levels of consciousness come down and be realized here on the unhappy earth? And how can what is eternal and lasting and real, how can that find a place to live here in drifting time? Just one more sentence. A lady at the back, you told me your name and I've forgotten. Teresa, yes.
How shall they yield, spread earth's dolorous soil, where life is only a labor and a hope? A child of matter and by matter fed, a fire flaming low in nature's grate, a wave that breaks upon a shore in time, a journey's toilsome pride with death for goal.
Yes. How is it possible for the ideal to be able to walk here on earth, on this dolorous, sorrowful soil of earth? Life on earth is only a labor and a hope. It's full of effort. It's hope that keeps us going. Life here on earth is a child of matter. It's fed by matter. It's a very weak little flame, a very small energy, flaming low in nature's grate. Does anybody here know this word grate? It's something we are absolutely not familiar with here. In houses in the West, in the time when we had to have coal fires or wood fires, the grate is that metal strips where you place the logs or the coal to burn, the grate. So nature provides some kind of support for this little flame which is life. Here life is like a wave. It rises and it falls. It breaks. It reaches the shore, the beach in time, and then that wave is finished. It's vanished. It's disappeared. And the characteristic of life on earth is a toilsome trudge. Trudging, it means walking with effort. You keep going although you're completely exhausted, full of effort. There's no joy in that kind of walking. And where is it going? To death. Death is its goal. So that's not a very pretty picture that he paints. The next thing he's going to say is that the avatars have lived and died in vain. So it's a very, very hopeless picture that he's giving of our earthly life. as I say, we don't have to take him all that seriously.
Also you said that the idea of Auroville we cannot yet realize. But I think when Mother created Auroville, she was hoping that we are able to manifest.
She was creating an opportunity for these ideals to be attempted to be put into practice. Yes, for sure. And definitely she wished that one day they would be put into practice. So that's why we shouldn't forget about those ideals. We shouldn't listen to this and say, no, it's not possible, it's failed, it will fail, there's no way that it can succeed. No, when we come to what Savitri says, she gives us a completely different picture.
Shraddhavan, I have one question. It's not really like that, but I tell you something. In Ashanda, Mother said, the end, le jusqu'au bout, is 2060. And I read the synthesis of yoga now, especially, and Ashanda also. And suddenly, coming just, I am just concentrate, is a new creation. When the new Mother, jusqu'au bout, but what is for you in the human body, mind, and physical new creation? Relation with idea, new creation.
You know, we have read in Book 3, Canto 3, there's a house of the Spirit and the new creation. And when we read that, we know that that's what we are aiming for. That's what all human beings want, really. And Sri Aurobindo tells us at the beginning of the Life Divine that the fact that this ideal goes on burning unquenchably in human consciousness for thousands and thousands of years, even though it has proved to be so far unrealizable, is the proof that one day it's going to be realized. 2060 sounds a little bit soon to me, but perhaps Mother used...
60, 2060.
Yes, that's only 40 years ahead.
Is this life? Is this life for new generation?
Sorry, I haven't understood. What?
In 1961, Mother said, on ira jusqu'au bout
en
2060.
So after 100 years. Yeah. But on other occasions she said, well, ask me about it after 1,000 years. No? So I don't think we should fix ourselves too much on dates, because otherwise when that date comes and passes and we haven't achieved, we'll feel very disillusioned. The thing is, we just have to keep going as long as necessary.
But for my inner experience, maybe now, tomorrow I don't know, but now I trust Mother.
Yes, I also feel that something is happening. I trust Mother, I feel very, very sure. But still, there's a long way to go.
The ideas are not manifesting in some other way, they are manifesting, no? In some way or other, like a lot of inventions, all those things. Otherwise, human being will be staying in the world.
Yes, that's what I mean. That perhaps these are earthly semblances of diviner things, but some progress is happening. And if we feel that we are part of an evolutionary process, then any small advance that any individual can make is contributing to that process. And if a whole society of people can make a real advance, then that's much more powerful. So that is what we are involved in. And we don't have to listen to this death who's trying to tell us all the time, it's impossible, this is just dreaming nonsense.
For that matter, even the formation of Auroville itself is the ideal, not towards the ideal only.
Yeah. Now we have to live up to that ideal. We have to be grateful that we've been given this opportunity and do our best to live up to it.
But the mother said Auroville will be, you know?
Yes, she said.
If it takes 50 years or 100 years or 500 years, it doesn't know, but it will be.
Yeah.
So it's depending on the Aurovillians, how much they push for it. No?
So shall we read these lines then?
And as far to the last words, as far as I understand these lines, when it's realized at any time, 50 or 100 or 1,000 years, we need a new ideal, I think.
Yes. Yes.
So there has to be another...
There will be something beyond. Yes. Right. Yes. When we've achieved something, we can't just stick with that. We have to... Yes, exactly right, Tom. Yeah. So, where were we? 43. A beast of prey that pauses in its prowl, it crouches under a bush in splendid flower to seize a heart and body for its food. This beast thou dream'st immortal and a god. O human mind, vainly thou torturest an hour's delight to stretch through infinity's long void and fill its formless, passionless gulfs, persuading the insensible abyss to lend eternity to perishing things, and tricks the fragile movements of thy heart with thy spirit's feint of immortality. All here emerges, born from nothingness. Encircled it lasts by the emptiness of space, a while upheld by an unknowing force, then crumbles back into its parent naught. Only the mute alone can forever be. In the alone there is no room for love. In vain to clothe love's perishable mud, thou hast woven on the immortal's borrowed loom the ideal's gorgeous and unfading robe. The ideal never yet was real made. Imprisoned in form, that glory cannot live. Into a body shut, it breathes no more. Intangible, remote, forever pure, a sovereign of its own brilliant void, unwillingly it descends to earthly air to inhabit a white temple in man's heart. In his heart it shines, rejected by his life. immutable, bodiless, beautiful, grand and dumb, immobile on its shining throne it sits. Dumb, it receives his offering and his prayer. It has no voice to answer to his call, no feet that move, no hands to take his gifts. Aerial statue of the nude idea, virgin conception of a bodiless God, its light stirs man the thinker to create an earthly semblance of diviner things. Its hued reflection falls upon man's acts. His institutions are its cenotaphs. He signs his dead conventions with its name. His virtues don the ideal's skyey robe and a nimbus of the outline of its face. He hides their littleness with the divine name. Yet insufficient is the bright pretense to screen their indigent and earthy make. Earth only is there, and not some heavenly source. If heavens there are, they are veiled in their own light. If a truth eternal somewhere reigns unknown, it burns in a tremendous void of God. For truth shines far from the falsehoods of the world. How can the heavens come down to unhappy earth, or the eternal lodge in drifting time? How shall the ideal tread earth's dolorous soil, where life is only a labor and a hope, a child of matter, and by matter fed, a fire flaming low in nature's grate, a wave that breaks upon a shore in time, a journey's toilsome trudge with death for goal.